Hello, and welcome to the Southcoast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more.
Well, I try to let our guests introduce themselves for the record. So, as we're evolving, you're going to be podcast number 9. So, as we're evolving, what's your first name?
Charles Hauck.
Okay. But everybody calls you Chuck.
Chuck, yes.
So Chuck Hauck.
Yeah, my grandfather was Charles. My father went by Charlie, so they called me Chuck.
They called you Chuck.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, how do you really, I ask people how you really pronounce your last name because, it's funny how people just put up with stuff. Like, my last name is Fortier, but down south it's Fortier. And up in Canada it's Fortier, that kind of thing. And I've only known 1 or 2 people with French last names, for example, who instead of Gagny, they prefer to be called Gagne. Yeah. So, how do you prefer?
It's Hauck is the way that we've always said it, but it's spelled Hauck, H-A-U-C-K. So I accept that. At least I answer to that.
Well, especially with Chuck in front of it, so I guess people just alliterate.
Yeah. It's like an Indian call or something. Chuck Hauck.
Chuck Hauck.
Yeah.
Or swear.
Yeah.
Hey, Chuck off. So, Chuck, wow. You are not going to be just doing one podcast. I can guarantee you that. If you like what's happened today, you're going to come back lots of times because really you are like a guy with a lot of hats. Let's put it that way. Where do you want to start? Gallery X? You want to start off as yourself as an artist? And I'm going to start off as yourself as an artist because what kind of an artist are you, Chuck?
All right. Well, I guess. I guess I'll start with how I came to New Bedford. My brother was architect for Whale back in the 70s, and they were getting ready to move the Robeson House, and they were doing a number of projects down in the historic district. It was after the big fire on the Maycomber building on Union, and Whale was really going through a transition, trying to save whatever they could downtown, and a lot of people wanted to just bulldoze the downtown area. I had graduated from high school, and there was a number of projects going.
Where did you go to high school?
Waite High School in Toledo, Ohio. So I had graduated on Friday. Saturday I had a big party, and Sunday I got a bus and came out here. And it was just going to be sort of a summer job. We lived right next door to the Roachstone Stuff House in the Barrister's Hall there, and I guess living there and watching all the girls that were walking by all the time, I asked my brother, I'm like, where are all those girls going? And he says, oh, that's the Swain School of Design. And I had a little bit of art talent and, grew up and went there, applied, and was accepted. And so I became a New Bedford resident. I never went back to Toledo. And I guess that was, 40-some years ago. But I graduated from Swain. I worked doing carpentry, restoration work, painting.
Now, hold on a second there. Did you work on Freestones?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so I did know you before I knew you because I was one of the first people to be, well, you know how tough it was during those days with, unemployment. It was really bad. And I remember all that work that went on. And in fact, it seemed like you guys, every time you moved something, you found something else, Yeah,
I worked with, there were 2 contractors. The first contractor that started Freestones was Warren Oxley.
I remember that name.
And Warren sort of started the project, and he was doing another thing. And then I think that he ended up moving back to Ohio or Iowa. And I started working with Pygmalion Restoration Associates, and they had done a number of projects. I think the Russell House on Russell Street, the Seth Russell House at the foot of Union Street, which I guess is the oldest building in the city, or the oldest predating the burning of New Bedford, which is right at the corner of Union, across from the National Club there. That building there.
Okay.
And that was moved. I believe it was on Water Street originally. That was sort of
Yeah, they moved a lot of buildings back then.
It was pretty, from a kid from Toledo coming here, and there was nothing to see a house rolling down the street, and and we basically would, after they were moved and set in, we'd get in, and I was just sort of a kid. Whatever they asked me to do, throw things into the dumpster, or wield a paintbrush, or whatever. It was just sort of a nice project, and they were always looking for some demo or some sort of work, so I could always get a crew from Swain people that would give us beer money anyhow, finish. And
yeah, 'cause I remember Carrie and Debbie speaking highly of you. You were one of the crafts people that they spoke about, and what's weird is that you seem to have touched or been a part of a lot of places that have become institutions. Now, Freestone's, even though it's changed hands, Freestone's Bar and Grill, Freestone's Restaurant, however, it's referred to several ways, but it's Freestone City Grill, has become an institution.
It is. I mean, I thinking about it, I can't think of any other business downtown that really changed it from being sort of, downtown was sort of
seedy,
yeah, and there were bars. That was the Pequot Lounge before that.
They had go-go girls in cages, right?
They were, and we were at the last party at the Pequot. If you can imagine, it was the Wales staff, which was this very proper crowd, with mixing it up with the regulars of the Pequot on the last night, and it was full of pool tables. But over the years, I've met a lot of people that said that they all had stories of the Pequot, and there were the big windows at Freestone's now were covered with plywood, and they were just like gun ports looking out, and it was. So there was a lot that was discovered. In that night, I did more. There were a couple of months when Pygmalion did the work, and I sort of started at the very end of the finishing Freestones, and but I did after Freestones. They built Station 1 up in Plymouth. Which was a firehouse, and that was
Mitch. Can't remember his last name now.
Michael Galusha.
Michael Galusha. Okay.
Michael Galusha was probably one of the greatest people I'd ever worked for. He was just such a nice guy. He was really intent on creating a place that very much like Freestone's, with lots of mahogany. We built a big staircase, 2 bars. So it was like, for me as a sculptor, I was just learning all these skills, woodworking skills from these talented guys that were a bunch of boat builders. They had a lot of expertise with working with wood, and it was kind of an exciting time for me too. And the crew most of them were all sailors. They, on the weekends, there was a schooner, the Voyager, out of New Rochelle, New York, and during the summer it raced up and down along the East Coast. So I was a couple times on weekends. Somebody couldn't make it, so I get the crew on these sailboat races, and it was a lot of fun. Working on wooden boats. I mean, it was. Now that there aren't many left, so wooden boats were something you had to take your time, get it right. You weren't going to,
cut corners.
and So it was a good training for a kid, a wood carving kid from Toledo.
Now let's fast forward. You're also now involved in another institution. We've left one behind, but we hopscotch over that one almost next door to what's the proper name of that Baptist church?
Oh, the First Baptist Church, which is the historic First Baptist Church, built in 1829. It was had a little bit of its own history, I think. They're from Robert's Rules of Orders was created because of a meeting in that building. I don't know if it was Major Roberts or Captain Roberts or whatever. After the Civil War, he attended one of the meetings or a couple of the meetings at the church, and it was just so unruly and out of hand that he went home and started the book Robert's Rules of Order,
which most legislative bodies or organizations use
now. So it was. I've been in a couple organizations that did use Robert's Rules of Order. We ended up arguing more over what Robert's Rules of Orders meant. Well, according to page 37, or whatever. But it was pretty interesting, and I think also it was very, very involved in the abolition movement at the time. I know that Frederick Douglass had spoke there several times. I think there was some...
Was he a congregant there? He or Nathaniel and Betsy Johnson?
Congregant there or spoke there was some sort of thing that he did storm out. I had talked to a woman who was doing a history there about the story. Was it, because there's balconies there, and a lot of the church, the African American or the immigrant families were asked to be up in the balconies. I thought that maybe that Frederick Douglass was asked to do that, and that's how the argument broke out.
Well, that's interesting because in the theaters, we had a lot of theaters. And I was discussing this with my wife, that it wasn't Jim Crow, but it was like an unspoken thing.
Right.
If you're white, you go here. If you're black, you go there. And in all of the theaters I remember as a kid, the Olympia, the Empire, Capitol, I don't remember if they had a balcony, but that's where the African Americans would go.
They
had a really nasty term for it.
Right. The Orpheum had the same thing.
Right.
It was for the balcony there was a nasty term for it. And according to the historian, I can't remember her name, she said that had nothing to do with the balcony, but that he wanted to make an announcement, and there was a protocol. He had to do something, and he didn't do it, and so he got stormed out.
Well, let's get on to your crew then, because it seems when you were talking about pulling together crews for Freestones, you pretty much did the exact same thing again with Earl and with Dawn and with a bunch of other people, right?
Yeah. I've always sort of worked with friends, getting crews together or whatever. Now I'm working with Don Wilkinson. Don's writes for the art writer for the Standard Times, but he was a fellow Swain student together. I think he was a year younger, or a year after me, but we've been friends all along, and he was original member of Gallery X and things. And,
let's go to that then, and I'll just because really, there's a lot of Chuck.
There's a lot, and so basically, I've been doing restoration to pay the bills, and I think over the years, and it actually, how Gallery X started was through a boat race. We were
a boat race.
The Ernestina, when it first came to the city, there was I'm going to say this was probably 1983 or so. There was a symposium. Was it a symposium? Put on by, I believe, UMass, and it was over, on the restoration, what they can do in the city, the different programs that were going on, and one of the talks that I attended was the Ernestina, and they were trying to figure out, it was fairly new to the city, and it was on the waterfront, and they were just trying to figure out ways that they could, bring attention to it, get more people to know it, to appreciate it, to go to see it in the waterfront. And because I had these friends that raced schooners up and down the East Coast, I said, well, New Bedford, the Ernestina should host a boat race. We'll get other classic wooden boats come to the city, and people will go down to see that, and possibly be in the race. And at the time, New Bedford Inc. had just started; they were just formed. And I'd written out a proposal for the race. The Captain Dan Moreland, he wasn't really hip to the idea, but his wife was, and she said, write something up or do something, which I did, and sort of passed it around. And Emmy Hahn, the first director of Downtown New Bedford Inc., liked the idea of the race. A friend of mine had just become the Commodore of the American Schooner Association. Philip LaFrance was his name. Owned the cutter, John Alden cutter, the Christmas, which is an incredibly beautiful boat. And he was psyched to organize the race because he had just become a start, and they hadn't had any races in Buzzards Bay. So we were able to put together a boat race. We had Spirit of Massachusetts, we had Pride of Baltimore, When and If. Many famous boats came to the race. It was at the old Twin Piers that had the big party there.
Right.
And I was excited because I was hoping to be in the race, but Emmy said, "Oh no, we have to have other events on shore. Once the boats leave, people aren't going to hang around downtown, so we need to have some sort of festival or something to do there." And I had mentioned that I'd known artists and I could put together an art show if we could have a space, if there was a space available. And Mary Ann Hodgson had a space on Spring Street right behind. Well, that's how we sort of Gallery X got our name. We were in between the YW and the Zeiterion. So we said, we'll call it Gallery X.
Now, just for my own mind, there was the Ladies of Hadassah.
They were the
previous tenants?
Yeah, they were the previous tenants, or they were right next door. I'm not sure.
And then there was the Purple Grape.
And the Purple Grape
which was a head shop.
And there was before,
that was pretty risky for back then.
That was before us. There was some purple in the place, though, and yes, I heard a lot of the stories. I mean, and we were at the time, we weren't much better, and it was a Purple Grape sort of years, but the night of the race and our first opening, we had I think 25 artists had put in work, and there were no other galleries downtown at the time. The Bierstadt Gallery had one on Johnny Cake Hill, but I think they had closed down. So it was, and there were a lot of empty storefronts in the downtown area, and we just said, well, we'll have an art show and just take it where it goes. And that night was just, the place was packed and no one left. It was, moved out onto the street. There was just a great crowd that hung around, and we're like, wow, maybe this New Bedford is ready for an art gallery. And we were able to work out a deal with Mary Ann Hodgson to rent the place, and we stayed there for 5 years, took over the storefront next to us, so it sort of doubled our space. And then the opportunity to move into the First Universalist Church on William Street, where we're at now. We moved in there in 1995. We just didn't. We didn't know any better. The building needed total restoration, and Reverend Richard Kellaway owned the building, and we had a pretty decent rent. And we were there for 3 years, doing the restoration, getting it going, and then we there was work that needed to be done on the steeple, and it was a little difficult trying to get volunteers or to raise money to fix someone else's building. So we said, well, let's just make an offer. We knew that Richard didn't want to keep it forever, and we sort of knew what he had bought it for, roughly what he had in it, and threw 20 grand on top of that, and made an offer, and I think he was happy to take it. So we've been there ever since. It's we love the building and love being part of downtown, and it was
25 years now.
30
30
years. Yeah, this was our 30th year, and I mean we were in that building for 25 years.
Right.
95 we moved into that. So
now that church or that building was also a Baptist church and a synagogue.
it was a little bit. Originally, it was a Universalist church. From 1855, it was built till for 75 years. I don't know when 75 years
Till they
ended.
built the stone one on Union and 7th.
Well, no, that was before. That was
before.
built. That was 1828. That
Right.
was built. So that was before us.
Yeah.
And then I think it became. We were a Pilgrim Church for a while. We were a synagogue. And then we were the Frederick Douglass Memorial AME was the last church that was there when we moved in, and it was sort of a turquoise blue sort of copper sort of patina color on the inside, so it was not conducive to art, but it was so we painted we got a lot of white paint and a lot of we had a group we called the Tuesday Night Warriors, where we'd get a case of beer and pizza and just paint the place, and we finally got it into good enough shape that we could actually have some art exhibits in there, and we eventually got an elevator in and restored the basement, put in the kitchen, handicap bathroom. So it was a slow evolution, but it didn't feel like it. There was always something going, and with monthly shows and 2 galleries, we don't have much downtime. By the time one thing's going up, there's something else going on. But
Could you have ever imagined any of this the night of your graduation party in Toledo, Ohio?
No. I had a girlfriend at the time that was sort of engaged.
Sort of engaged? I know
Sort
a
of,
lot of people said that.
in high school, and I just figured I'd work in one of the factories, Jeep or somewhere in Toledo, and family, kids, all that, just to do the Toledo thing, and so it was. That's sort of how. I had so many friends that all they talked about, I'm getting out of here, I'm going to go to this place, I'm going to do that. And I just never really thought of that, because I'm like, what? Going somewhere and moving was just something that didn't really, I don't know anybody there. It was hard to imagine just moving somewhere, and all my family, everyone else was there, but didn't take more than a week or two of once I moved out here saying, the ocean is pretty nice. But I mean, I grew up on Lake Erie, and summers I spent on it. There's a big island put in bay in the there, which is the Battle of Lake Erie took place there, and there's a monument. It's a big tourist area there. So
I have not yet begun the fight. Kind of is that the
I think
the Battle of Erie,
I think yes, that's Oliver Hazard Perry was the Commodore. His brother was Matthew Perry, and there were some, I think, Fairhaven ties to the Perry family. Somehow they were tied, and interesting characters. Yeah, they basically, his spars and everything were all blown out. He was just sitting there, and they were filling up the cannons with glass or anything they had. And
this is all for the record, and this is what it's all about. This is about history, and you really are like not just a couple of pages in this history book that we're trying to develop through these podcasts, through the articles, through the website itself, which is a work in progress, because it's Dido right now. It's data in, data out. You can't take anything out because nothing's gone in. So these podcasts have been phenomenal for lots of reasons. They're like emissaries. They get people's minds stimulated about other topics and so on and so forth. But I was honored to curate your retrospective show.
Oh, yes, thank you
How
so
many years
much.
ago was that now?
I'm guessing 7 years or so.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that was absolutely phenomenal. That was probably one of the biggest openings, I think, that I can remember. Not that I go to every single one of them, but it was at least, and we've discussed this several times on this show, at least it wasn't the same 20 people that show up at everybody's opening, right? It was way more than that.
It was. I mean, when you have a show, or whatever. I mean, you're like, I hope people come, and getting the work together. Do I have the work there? That.
Oh yeah, you were driving me crazy. You kept wanting to stick more and more stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like, it has to have flow.
Yeah. I mean,
So how did you get into these characters? That's why I asked you, what kind of an artist are you? Because a sculptor, most people think it's metal and stone, but yours are explain the process, the whole thing. I mean, because you're relatively a unique.
Well, I started out as a wood carver. I was like, in college, I was like, the grain of wood. That's just what I wasn't into painting anything. I wasn't really into figurative. Just sort of carving the wood and letting the wood sort of show itself off or whatever. Sort of following in abstract forms and things. And so I was sort of into that. But I had a teacher who actually he just passed away within the last couple months.
What was his name?
Russell Daly. I was the sculpture instructor at Swain. And Russell was a very skilled technician, craftsman. He worked a lot with metal and different things. But he had a love for classic folk art. And through him, he really, sort of stressed that on us or had us looking at like folk art, different. And I would go to the Whaling Museum and look at the old whirligigs and the whalebone pie crimpers and these carved things that people said with that sort of that whimsical sort of characters, and little farmers doing things, and I sort of took a love of that, and I found one thing with my carving, I was real good at gluing them back together after I would knock them over. Just as I'm just about to finish it, I would whack it too hard and fall over and bust. So I was getting the epoxy and clamping things together, and I started doing sort of rocking sculptures that were sort of like worked like whirligigs, but instead of wind blowing, you rocked them, and there were weights inside that would make the figures do different things, sort of. The locomotion was provided by the rocking, so it was kind of, they were fun to make and different things, but I'm a horrible engineer. I'd try and work it out on paper, and they never would work out like I planned. But I'd keep working them, and I'd finally get them to work, but they would to sell them and make any money on it. It was just like, the prices for my time that I put into them it wasn't conducive to making money. But I was able to get rid of them as gifts and donations and things. But so they were pretty popular. But I was like, that's when I realized I got to figure out a way more, because I wanted things to do things, and wood was just so heavy, and so I sort of worked with a wire. I'd sort of start with a drawing, like sort of make skeletons with wire.
Armatures.
And then armatures, and then I would use foil or styrofoam or epoxy, and then coat it with a rubberized Formica adhesive, mixed with paint. Just basically, I was always inventing whatever I was coating it with, or putting it together, or gluing it together was, I think, things that I was making. You couldn't very well go to the hardware store and say, I need this. It was like, well, I need a combination of this and this and this, or whatever I could get my hands on. So it was just basically sort of inventing things to do what I needed. And it was all learned through, I think I specialized and learned from doing it wrong, over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, that didn't work, and I'd try different things. And
trial and error kind of thing.
Yeah, I was definitely a trial and error. The school of trial and error was my alma mater. And but eventually things would work out, and it worked out quicker. And I started working more with wind pieces, because the pieces were lighter, more durable, more flexible. I could move them outdoors. And yesterday took down. I had a show this summer at the Buttonwood Zoo of I think I had like 21 pieces of wind sculptures, different animals and creatures, and it was a lot of fun there. They were very hospitable, very helpful, they've done a great job at the zoo. I hadn't really been there for 20 years or so, and it was just what they had done and how they were doing and taking care of the animals. I was very impressed, so I was very honored to have been able to have the opportunity to do that show.
What's the weirdest thing anybody's ever asked you or commented on about your work?
I've had people say, well, this is craft. This is, it isn't fine art. This is craft, which sort of hit me the wrong way, but also it's like, well, I guess it is. I really try and not go by labels or whatever. My work, I do bounce around on different things from figurative to not figurative to so the labels really don't bother me too much. I mean, some people just they feel they have to put labels on them. Well,
Right,
this is this or that.
Are they grotesque? Are they whimsical? Are they fantastical? Are they, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different names.
I think I did a series of toothy characters. Big teeth. I always wanted to make these scary monster things that always turn out happy. Like you're like, oh, he's so cute. It's like, and I don't know how I couldn't make them as scary, and as I wanted to, but because they would be sort of like, okay, yeah, that's thing's ugly and it's got big teeth and it's got,
So that they're so ugly they're cute.
They're
kind
cute,
of thing?
yeah. I think people like, oh, they like them because they're cute,
Yeah.
and.
You think people, after you passed away and piece of your work comes up at Sotheby's and it sells for like, I don't know, let's just for giggles, at $3 million, it's not art anymore, it's not craft anymore, now it's art?
Well, yeah, right. Well, I'm going to say around 2002, there was a whale auction, and I used to donate to their auctions every year, and one year I'd done a sculpture of a toothy dog, kind of, and it was blue, and I called it the Blue Bitch, and I had donated it to one of the Wales auctions, and it was the standard. It got on the cover of, I think it wasn't Coastin' then, but it was the
Bowsprit?
Whatever the Sunday Art, or the Arts thing, and it was on the cover of it, and it was, it was sold. I never saw it again. And I don't know if you know Steve Richardson was a member. Moved to New Orleans.
There's so many Richardsons around here. It's crazy.
Yeah. Steve, he lives in New Orleans, but he has a couple of my sculptures from the year, and he had a friend who was a realtor, was selling a house or something, and went in there, and there was a sculpture in there, which was the Blue Bitch. And
in New Orleans?
No, it was here.
Oh,
but,
okay.
But they contacted my friend in New Orleans and said, I have this piece that looks like it could be by your friend, and took a picture and sent it to him, and he says, grab it if you can, because the person that lived there died or something happened, and basically everything in their house was getting tossed into a dumpster. So
that's awful.
So I was able to, Steve rescued it, and I went by his house, and he gave it to me as a gift. So the Blue Bitch is back.
The Blue Bitch is back.
And I have it at my house. It looks as good as the day that it left. So they had taken good care of it. And I tried to contact Whale to see if they had any record who bought it, what happened to them, and they I think they started keeping record, but they didn't have record of it. So I'm still not sure who bought it. So.
Because at one time, that was the place to buy really incredible stuff. I mean, old signs from buildings that predate your arrival here in the city, going back to the 50s and 60s. I mean, really nice graphic pieces.
And I remember Tom Corey was one of my instructors at Swain, did the posters there for years. And, they were great events. And Penry War used to be the auctioneer.
Ah, yes.
And he was very proper British.
Yeah.
And his son Michael was one of the partners of Pygmalion, who did Freestones. They also Penry and his wife Dorothy had a store on right down the street there.
On William Street.
Not on William.
That's not the same place that is now Arthur Minnie's gallery.
No.
There was another guy there.
They were next to the Glass Museum. Those two little Greek revivals. There was Hathaway
Alan
House.
Scott had one of them.
Right.
Caleb Spooner was the other one, right?
And they were. And Bob Saltmarsh had a store there, and so we, and Penry was just this great guy that did the auctions, and and he was just so British, and it was just the auctions were a great event. Yeah, they had great things.
Do they still
there.
do them anymore? The whale auctions?
They don't. They sort of do.
But it's not. It was an annual event, if I remember.
It was an annual event.
A name from the past. She was my printmaking teacher at SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University. Was Roseanne Radozovich, and she had done several of those posters, and it was a very prestigious thing to get to be the one who did the whale auction poster. Also, Center Street. I'm sorry, Center Street was Roseanne. I think
Center
she may have done it. Yeah,
that was.
Yeah,
they were two great events downtown, and. The raffle, I remember one year, the raffle, I bought an antique hospital bed, with the cranks and thing. I mean, it was so uncomfortable. I ended up getting rid of it, but I was pretty, for like $30.
Yeah.
It was like, now it's probably worth quite a bit more. But, and for just about nothing, you could get great things. I think there was somebody one time bought a chronometer or whatever, from one of Colonel Green's boats, or
that's right. We were talking about Colonel Green's electric car, and I think the name of the place was Major's Garage, and I think it ended up somewhere on Ashley Boulevard. It was sitting on the roof for years. I don't know if it still exists anymore.
That was one of his cars.
That's what I was told. Those, I mean, being our age and such, we saw vestiges of the previous generations not appreciated and just disappear and so on and so forth.
Now it's like...
Speaking of which, let's go back to Gallery X and some of your... In fact, you probably are one of the best resources in town for this, because how many artists have been members, functioning artists for most of their life, and passed away and there's no tombstone for them, so to speak. There's no bookmark in a page. There's no page to bookmark. There's nothing to let anybody know now, or those who are coming up, that they still exist, or they existed. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well,
can you drop a few names from memory?
Oh, for Gallery X members, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
was George Saulnier one?
George Saulnier was one. We did actually. Do you remember Joe Raposa?
Yeah.
Joe.
Was he in the Bristol building? On the second floor.
Joe used to teach in Fairhaven.
Okay.
And he was a Gallery X member for a number of years.
Yeah, you're doing a memorial retrospective with his wife.
We're doing a retrospective of his work now, and
his wife is Nancy.
Hazel.
Hazel. Okay.
Joe and Hazel, and he was a great member. He was a few years older than us, and when we moved into the church, I mean, we were like, oh yeah, we could do this, we could do that, and
he was the voice of reason.
He was the voice of reason, like, because we'd have people that would come in with proposals for ideas that were like,
way out there,
there, and he was like, so you want to do this, and you're thinking like, how the hell are you gonna make any money doing that? I mean, so he could shorten meetings with common sense.
Yeah,
we'd all like, how do we tell this?
So who else? Out of your mind's eye. I mean, there's been a load of them.
Joe Alexander.
Now his
Fred
estate
Lewis.
is with Dr. Richard Connor. Freddie Loomis, that rings a bell.
Fred Lewis was
Lewis. Okay,
was an actor, painter, very interesting character. Madeline, was it Dykema? Madeline Dykema. She was a member of it. There were dozens that, and we really want to do a.
Do you have records of them at all, like bios, artist statements, images? I mean, even 35 millimeter slides or snapshots or Polaroids or anything.
One of the things we have, one of our first years when we first started the gallery, we got a grant to document all our openings on videotape. Which we've done, but we've never, they're all sitting in a thing. We have to take them and
they got to be digitized. Yeah,
we have to do that. I mean, which is a great thing that we had done at the time that we didn't really think too much of. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna film this. But we're we're one of those grants. We should have paid to do that, but we do. And when Catherine Reichelbusch was involved, she was great at every time there was a newspaper article, she kept scrapbooks. So we've got like scrapbooks of a number of years. Now we sort of stopped now. Most of the things we can find online, but before that, so we've got, it's great to when I'm gallery sitting and nothing to do, you can go through all the books and see the things, and it's kind of mind-boggling how many shows, because we've over the years, over 30 years, with 2 galleries, monthly shows, and other events. It's like around 400 that we've done, which is sort of mind-boggling. And no wonder I feel so damn tired. But it's great, and I think one thing with Gallery X, we were never tried to go out and bring in established artists from Boston or New York. We really would much rather encourage local artists, show off their work, get people to make art, do it, and to just the act of creating art. I mean, if you bring in an established art, they're going to come in. They're going to want the lighting like this. They're going to want that. So you're catering that where you're much rather have an artist that's happy to be there, that's going to work with you, and then it's great to see them as they mature and they improve. Their work is.
Well, I wrote an article, if I remember, about Gallery X. I believe they called it a sanctuary. And I remember, I mean, it's on our website now. We've repurposed it. You know, we're still finding some of the articles from the old artist profiles that need to be put up there. But I remember saying that was the place in town that accepted anybody and everybody, not because you had no taste or not because you had no standards, but it was such a lot of people cut their artistic teeth there.
And that's what we really wanted. We wanted sort of people, you know, it was the act of making art. We wanted to encourage that, you know. I mean, it might not be great, and I mean, we charge like an entry fee to be in the shows, so we're not. I mean, and those usually cover our costs, our operating costs, where we're not having to sell art to pay our bills. It's not like, you know, if we have a show and, you know, we get, you know, 50 or 60 people in it, we can make enough money that we can cover our things. And if anything sells, we have a low commission, 25 for members and 35 for non-members, right. which is a bonus if anything does sell.
Right.
But
tell me about Jennifer Demers, because that was one of the things I believe that was one of the sections of that article they wrote about Jennifer Demers. It's kind of a wonderful. It isn't kind of. It's a wonderful story.
Well, Jennifer is a member. Her parents.
Her parents' names?
Norbert and
Priscilla.
Priscilla, yes. I was going to say Penelope.
It happens when you're under pressure, yeah.
Priscilla, yes, and that. Jennifer was belonged to one of the people from the in Fairhaven. What's the
started with an N.
The Mascot.
The Mascot, yeah, the Mascot group. Yeah, it was for
and she
challenged.
Yeah, she
individuals.
was challenged. I don't know what exactly she had, but she was mentally challenged, and but she was, you know, she was taking painting classes, and she was a very competent artist. And
Susan
Cabral, was
yes,
I think one
was
of
her
the
instructor,
teachers.
right?
Yeah.
And this is all important stuff to put in there in case anybody's ever going to look for this kind of thing.
Sure, and I mean we you know, people chat with different challenges and things. We're happy to include them in any show. It's not you know, I think we're trying to. The act of creating art, I think, is what we're trying to promote.
Yeah. I always wondered if there was a show, and how do you say this and still remain sensitive and such, where, okay, artists of Jennifer's ilk, which she's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
There's that crucifixion scene that's something else. And other artists, and you mix them all up together, and you never told anybody who the artist was.
Right.
I think it's the great denominator. It's the great, you know, you've got people who paint as though they have their children. You have people who paint as, you know, they're very polished. But you were saying that it's just about the art.
Yeah, I you know, I mean, if they're doing it and making it, it's like, we, you know, don't leave it in your closet, don't put it in your basement or your attic, you know, like, get it out there. I mean, so many things that I might not particularly like, others love, you know, or they're gonna come in and collect. They, you know, so it's great that you know, I mean, the last thing we want to judge or censor. I mean, we've had shows where I guess they've pushed people's buttons as maybe being a little too, you know, risque.
As much as or worse than Luis Villanueva's Colo Colo Gallery was a practical raid or something, wasn't it? The erotica show, was it? What was that one called?
Well, the one there. Well, we had Sex at the X was
yeah.
was one that caused considerable
Consternation.
Yes.
Can't use that word very many. Yeah.
It was
often. Really.
And I think we had a couple of those, and I mean there were some that was maybe got a little too risque. That we said, well, maybe we should not do this show. Try to because it was
pull back a little bit.
Pull back,
that's even not bad.
That was like,
subliminal
whoa.
Freudian thing. Yeah. All right. Hey, it's that time. We're coming to the end of another podcast episode. Once again, I'm your host, Ron Fortier, and I really want to let's thank our guest. I can hear the applause that people are out there in the great cyberspace. Let's thank our guest, Chuck Hauck, or Charles Hauck, who stopped by today. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Well, our Gallery X's amazing art raffle's coming up on November 30th. And
2019, because don't forget, somebody might be listening to this.
2019, Vinny Lovegrove is our auctioneer, who's Miracle Fish Puppet Theater, Toe Jam Puppet Band is great.
Got to get him on this show.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And a funny guy, and he's a great host.
Another institution.
Yes, he is. And and a lot of their history, they used to do all the parades downtown first night, and the Gallery X was sort of the staging area where they'd get their costumes on and everything. And you always knew when Vinny and his crowd were there because there'd be confetti and just everything everywhere. And,
it's great. It's great. Every time I do another episode, I'm so glad I did the first episode. I'm so glad that we're doing this because I really think that we've got something that we can leave behind, even if it comes to a point where some of our guests, that's the only thing that's recorded of their passing through this sphere,
Well, it was like this a couple of weeks ago, like with my brother being involved with Whale. He left the city 40 years ago, in '78, and Whale, they're doing legacy dinners, and my brother Tom passed away in 1992, but Whale had a legacy dinner where they honored people that were involved in shaping and wanted to save the thing. And Tom had done the designs for what is now the National Historic Park, and so they picked him out as one of their honorees. So my family got to come and got to tour all of New Bedford, and I had my work at the
family of the hour, so to speak. I may have even met your brother because I worked for Tony Souza as the assistant manager for the Office of Historic Preservation. We were doing the windshield survey. There was every building built before 1920. And one of the jobs I had as a friend and one of the people that worked with us, the photographer Robin Shields, who every morning we had to go down there and photograph the Rodman House's progress as they were pulling it out and bringing it around the corner. And then there was that fateful morning when they realized, oh crap, nobody took the corners.
Well, they were going to turn it.
Yeah.
And they couldn't turn it. And I worked with the original mover was named Frank Smith. I think
those trucks were on their rear wheels. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They were like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 wheelers, and they were on their back wheels.
I mean, it was at the time. It was one of the largest brick buildings that was moved in the country.
Yeah.
It was like, and I remember my first day. They're like, okay, here's your job. We're going to clear out the basement because we're going to pick this building up, move it down this parking lot, take it down the street, move it down there.
You're kidding, right?
Like, really? Okay, well, that's going to take all summer. I'm in.
Yeah. Chuck, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.